Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering the Harvard Hamas student groups that claim they are the victims and they need your donations because they're having a really hard time ever since they said they supported terrorist attacks. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. Coming from the Daily Mail, Hamas supporting Harvard students, these are Harvard students, mind you, beg for donations to support their mental health after suffering relentless bullying over supporting terrorist attacks on Israel. You can't even make these kinds of headlines up. Harvard's Arab Alumni Association has appealed for donations to help students' mental health after they were subjected to relentless bullying and intimidation for blaming Israel for the Hamas terror attacks on October 7th. The Harvard Undergraduate Palestine Solidarity Committee issued a letter on October 7th, co-signed by 33 other Harvard student organizations, stating, "We, the undersigned student organizations, hold the Israeli regime entirely responsible for all unfolding violence." Keep in mind, of course, October 7th was the day of the attack. Immediately, they looked to take advantage of the attack with all the civilians killed, with all the damage and destruction, and the hostage taking. So far, it's at least 1,400 people killed in Israel over these terrorist attacks. And these student groups get together to say, oh, great, this is something we can use to take advantage of. The students leading the 33 organizations and the Solidarity Committee were named and faced calls to be blacklisted for future employment. They included the son of British businesswoman Jo Malone. On Wednesday, the Arab Alumni Association wrote to members appealing for help in supporting the students. Instead, they could have just apologized. They said this, quote, "They have been subjected to relentless bullying and intimidation," the association wrote in a letter obtained by reporter John Hassan. Quote, "This situation is rapidly deteriorating as some students find their names on watch lists, creating severe risk for their immigration status and future career prospects. Our ask and plea to you all is to extend your hand to these students and provide them the vital assistance they need within your capacity and scope of influence." So put your name, your reputation, your money, and your resources behind these students that took this ridiculously beyond controversial stand. How about the students just take responsibility for what they said, apologize, or deal with it on their own? Quote, "They may require legal counsel, health care, mental health support, financial aid, or mentorship to navigate these turbulent and uncertain times." Neither Harvard nor the association have responded to DailyMail.com's request for comment on this. Of course, they're not going to respond to this. The letter was sent on the day of the attacks, which saw Hamas terrorists stage a dawn raid from Gaza on a music festival near the border and villages nearby. Women and children were murdered in their beds, and an estimated 150 to 199 people taken hostage. Since the raid, 1,400 Israelis have been identified as killed. Men, women, children, babies, soldiers, elderly, they spared nobody. Today's events did not occur in a vacuum, this statement read. For the last 2 decades, millions of Palestinians in Gaza have been forced to live in an open-air prison. Israeli officials promised to, quote, "open the gates of hell," and then the massacres in Gaza have already commenced. In the coming days, Palestinians will be forced to bear the full brunt of Israel's violence. The apartheid regime is the only one to blame, it continues. Claudine Gay, the president of Harvard, said on Wednesday that the letter does not speak for the educational institution as a whole or its leadership. On Friday, she issued another apology. Gay said the university rejects terrorism, hate, and harassment based on people's beliefs while embracing free expression, even, quote, "views that many of us find objectionable, even outrageous." Here's a tip for Claudine Gay. Perhaps just completely reject terrorism, no matter what it's based on. Terrorism is just bad wherever you go. There's no good time to use terrorism. Claudine Gay wrote, Quote, "We do not punish or sanction people for expressing objectionable or outrageous views." Quote, "But that is a far cry from endorsing them. It's in the exercise of our freedom to speak that we reveal our characters and we reveal the character of our institution." Among those signing the letter was perfume tycoon Joe Malone's son, who helps lead a pro-Palestinian Harvard group behind the letter. Josh Wilcox is listed as one of the 3 students who run the undergraduate Palestine Solidarity Committee, according to Harvard's Directory of Student Groups. His mother, Jo, a British perfume giant founder who sold her company to Estee Lauder in 1999, refused to address her son, simply saying the war in the Middle East had left her heartbroken, as she branded the attack by Hamas as abhorrent. More than 1 million people have fled their homes in the Gaza Strip ahead of an expected Israeli invasion that seeks to eliminate Hamas completely. And that's surprising because Israel had warned the population of northern Gaza to go ahead and leave Gaza because they were about to be essentially in the middle of a war zone. They did this with dropping flyers, with making announcements. And while Hamas tried to block a lot of people from leaving, and they did block a lot of people from leaving, at least 600,000 people left Gaza City and fled to the south, which is what Israel recommended they do for their own personal safety and the safety of their families. Aid groups warn an Israeli ground offensive could hasten a humanitarian crisis. There is no question there's already a humanitarian crisis in Gaza over these Hamas attacks. Israeli forces, supported by U.S. warships, have positioned themselves along Gaza's border and drilled for what Israel said would be a broad campaign to dismantle the militant group. Israel has said that everyone who is in Hamas is dead. We'll see if they carry through with that. Hopefully they do. We just don't need big terrorist organizations running around making terrorist attacks. It's never a good thing. A week of Israeli airstrikes has demolished many neighborhoods in Gaza. However, Gaza still finds time to send rockets over, however it is that they manage to do it. The war that began October 7th has become the deadliest of 5 Gaza wars for both sides, with more than 4,000 dead. The Gaza Health Ministry, which is of course run by Hamas, so it's hard to know if you can trust them or not. Probably you can't. They're the guys doing terrorist attacks. Said 2,750 Palestinians have been killed and 9,700 wounded. Many people have died. Many people have been wounded. Who knows what the numbers are? It's impossible to know. Iran's foreign minister has warned on Monday that preemptive action is possible if Israel moves closer to its looming ground offensive in the Gaza Strip. Iran has literally billions of dollars invested in the Hamas organization, which Iran uses to push their agenda with attacking Israel. Iran does not want to see Israel do a ground offensive, send soldiers in, because they know that Israel is going to destroy Hamas no matter what the cost. And while Harvard is trying to figure out how to protect its student groups that are supporting the terrorist actions of Hamas, they are getting themselves in trouble with some of their multi-billion-dollar backers. Harvard mega donor Kenneth Griffin placed a call demanding leaders denounce letter from 35 student groups blaming Israel for terrorist attacks, while administrators delayed a public response. Ken Griffin is a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund guy, major supporter of Harvard, and he's not happy with their response. A prominent benefactor to Harvard who made a donation of over $500 million with a commitment of $300 million this year alone, has pressured Harvard to speak in defense of Israel following last week's terror attack that killed more than 1,300 Israelis. Now it's estimated to be, unfortunately, 1,400 Israelis, and up to another 36 countries' citizens as well involved in the attack and the hostage taking. Ken Griffin, who built his wealth on Wall Street, reached out to the head of the university's board, Penny Pritzker, requesting that the educational establishment take a strong stance in defense of the country. His call came after a letter from student groups blamed Israel for the attacks, but before university leaders had responded publicly. Griffin and Pritzker were in agreement during their conversation, and the billionaire was told that the university was preparing to make a statement on the war. Harvard, whose endowment has now risen to almost $51 billion. So this is how much money they have in their investment fund at Harvard that's owned by Harvard. And they've named their graduate school of arts and sciences after Griffin. because of all of his donations. In addition to this, from Gateway Pundit, Victoria's Secret founder Leslie Wexner severs financial ties with Harvard over its dismal failure to condemn Hamas attacks. Leslie Wexner, the founder of Victoria's Secret and chair of the Wexner Foundation, has severed all financial and programmatic ties with woke Harvard University and its Kennedy School of Government. The decision comes in the wake of what Wexner describes as Harvard's dismal failure to condemn the recent Hamas attacks on Israel, which resulted in the deaths of over 1,000 Jews, now over 1,400, including 20 Americans. The Wexner Foundation has been a long-standing partner of Harvard Kennedy School, providing scholarships and leadership training to Israeli public service leaders for over 3 decades. For all the death, damage, and destruction, I don't see the Harvard students who supported the Hamas attacks as victims. They are intelligent enough to get themselves into Harvard. They decided to take a stand and put themselves out publicly, and now they have to take responsibility for it. I certainly wouldn't be donating anything to support those people. It's impossible to be on the right side of history and to support terrorists. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.